their citizens as hard as the UK government does. And I think both President Obama and Vice President Biden would understand that and want to make sure that the safety of the U.S. citizens that are traveling in Gaza and the West Bank is the highest priority when we're over there.
The anniversary of Rachel's death will be taking place in the midst of the trial. Mm-hmm. Trial begins March 10th. Her death occurred on March 16th. What are you calling on people to do?
We're calling on people to be visible on March 16th, calling for accountability in Rachel's case, but also making the linkages between accountability for her and the lack of accountability that's occurred particularly with Gaza, with what happened in Operation Cast Lead in December of 2008 and January of 2009, but really for all of the acts of violence against Palestinians and others in the occupied territories. And we're also calling for attention to the assault on nonviolent human rights observers and activists that continues in various ways. There are Palestinians, now a growing number of Palestinians who have died in nonviolent protests to the wall in the West Bank. People can find their names, I think, by going to the International Solidarity Movement website.
The Separation Wall.
The Separation Wall. And sometimes I read the list of those names. Palestinians resist nonviolently in many different ways, but this is in nonviolent protest to the wall. And also, I think it's important for people to make the link between our ability to access the Israeli courts and the fact that Palestinians have really little opportunity to do that. We understand that currently Palestinians who want to operate in the courts or to take their cases to the courts have to put a bond forward of something between $20,000 and $50,000 in order to bring a suit. And this is, of course, very prohibitive to them to be able to do that. B'Tselem and Human Rights Watch and other organizations have talked about the impunity that the Israeli military enjoys because of lack of accountability through the courts and in other ways. And I hope that people will be visible to say we've had enough of this and to call for accountability for Rachel, but to link it to these other larger issues.
Amy, one other very specific thing that people could do, and I'm calling for people to do, the U.S. government has come out against the blockade or the continued occupation and siege on Gaza. The children that were behind the wall that Rachel stood in front of are still under a state of siege. And I think that very specifically people around the world and certainly in this country could write, call, or fax the White House and say not only should we be working to have the Israelis lift that siege, but if they continue to be unwilling to do so, then the United States should come in there, work out a way that they could come in. And the Berlin airlift, it sent a message to the world about our ability to protect people around the world and our willingness to do so. If we did something similar by sea to the Gaza Strip, it would change the view of Americans around the world for maybe another 50 years. It is something that's doable, and it's something that the people out, your fans, could actually physically do, and ask the White House to do that.
I don't know who wants to take this on, but what did happen to your daughter on March 16th? What do you understand happened?
My understanding of the case, you know, after looking at all the evidence that I have seen, and in particular, there's an IDF video. It's a still camera that was out on the border that day that filmed the area that Rachel and the activists were in. It did not actually film the incident of her killing. The camera at the time that she was killed just happened to pan towards the Egypt border and was focused on the Egypt border away from where Rachel was at the time, and then after she was hit, quickly panned back around to where she was. And I've looked at that video in second-by-second detail, painstakingly trying to figure out exactly what was going on. after looking at that and other evidence, I am very confident that the bulldozer driver and operator knew that Rachel was in front of that bulldozer as it began to move forward towards her. We know that they did not see Rachel leave that visibility field because, of course, she was hit and injured. So she did never leave that visibility.
What she was wearing?
She was wearing a red vest, like what you would see a flagger on the side of the road wear. So very obvious red reflective vest. And one of the things was when I first got that copy of that IDF videotape, the U.S. government requested that tape. It came in very grainy black and white footage. Since that time, more recently, an Israeli reporter was able to obtain a color copy of that film. And when you see that color copy, the red vest, there was another activist that was wearing a red vest as well, and he's on the scene. It stands out remarkably in that color film. There's no doubt that she would have been visible wearing that vest. I want to point out about the color copy of the tape, too. When the black and white version, it actually does show Rachel standing on the scene prior to her being killed. We know from testimony that the scene that she's, the place that she's shown on that video, she actually walks forward slightly, I think about 20 to 30 yards, and she's actually hit and killed about 20 and 30 yards in front of where she's seen on that black and white tape. But when the color copy showed up, amazingly, that point at which Rachel was still alive and could be seen, that portion of the tape wasn't provided to the reporter. It was cut out. So there is this feeling when I look at that there's a great attempt to try to depict that Rachel couldn't be seen on the scene that day. But why aren't we given the whole copy of the tape? Why wasn't our U.S. government given a color version of that tape when they repeatedly asked to have the audio transmissions of the bulldozer drivers and their headquarters, as well as the videotape sent to the U.S. government on behalf of our family?
Are you hoping to get that in this trial?
We always had the discovery process, and we have not been given any further tape. So at this time, I'm not confident that that would come forth.
Is that a violation, Cindy, of the judicial process in Israel, that in discovery you're not getting what you're asking for if it exists?
Well, I believe that it is. We've asked for the evidence that's available, and the videotape has been controversial from the beginning. Part of it is that the first stories that we got from the Israeli government, I think the first one was that Ed McEwen, who was in the American embassy, said he was told initially that a wall fell on Rachel from a home demolition, and then the story went to, no, we weren't doing any demolitions that day, and then a PowerPoint taken from this video was circulated through the United States Congress and shows a picture of the bulldozer with a high mound of earth and says, puts an X where Rachel's body was, and says, see, she couldn't be seen. What we know through, and have been speaking about for some time through Sarah's analysis, is that that wasn't the bulldozer that hit Rachel. There were two bulldozers in the area that day. Each of them had two people inside. There was an armored personnel carrier there as well that was supposed to also be looking at what was happening in the area. But the photo that was circulated to the members of the United States Congress to say to them from the Israeli officials to the U.S. Congress, see, she couldn't be seen, is false. And so there's been a repeated effort that we've seen through the years to provide misinformation.
Rachel's parents, Cindy and Craig Corrie, and her sister, Sarah Corrie Simpson, on their quest for the truth and accountability for the death of Rachel Corrie. The civil trial begins today in Haifa, Israel. Rachel was killed 7 years ago on March 16, 2003. If you'd like a copy of today's show, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. Democracy Now! Is hiring an online outreach and communications manager. We're looking for an experienced online strategist to help us reach the widest possible online audience. You can go to democracynow.org for more information. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshire, for Doug Caduce, Angelique